I'm not going to start with any easy questions.
What would you do if you couldn't fail?
I was vulnerable in the sense of I was just who I was.
The cold exposure conditions the inside of our body to literally adapt.
Whatever happens in the gut happens in the brain, and whatever happens in the brain happens in the gut.
Finding the grace and the humor.
Anti-aging is associated with at least an hour of deep sleep nightly.
Absolutely had mentors, absolutely 100% had coaches.
90+% of the decisions that we make today actually stem from fear.
Allow ourselves to have imperfection.
Nothing starts without a plan, nothing ever goes to plan.
Chaga is actually the most antioxidant rich food on the planet.
If we can bring a practice into our lives that helps us be more vulnerable. I'm so thrilled that this content is getting out there, that you guys are promoting bold and vulnerable message and aspirations for people, because I hope that we can all really live that every day.
Hey, this is Jessica.
And Svetlana, and you're listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast,
where we aim to inspire others to live authentically through sharing the bold and vulnerable stories of peak performers across a variety of industries. This episode is brought to you by Four Sigmatic. My go-to products are the Lion's Mane Coffee, Reishi, Cordyceps, and Chaga Elixirs, and the 10 mushroom blend that I add to my post-workout plant protein smoothies. They also just launched a new protein powder of their own that I am pumped to try. Head to foursigmatic.com, and when you check out, use our discount code, all caps, bold and vulnerable. Enjoy your products. Jay Oliveira is a competitive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athlete who has competed all over the world and is a Masters Pan American and Masters World Champion. Not only is Jay a top athlete, he's also been whole foods plant-based vegan since January 2012. All right, welcome to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. We are so excited for our guest today. Jay, and correct me if I'm wrong, so your last name is Oliveira? Am I saying it right?
Oliveira, yep, very good. Most people don't do that correctly.
I tried.
How are you, ladies?
We're so great. Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm excited about it.
Yes, we are as well. New year 2020. We're pumped for the new season of the show, and Svetlana is back in action, back from just giving birth to her new baby. So we're excited to have Svetlana back.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we've given kind of like a quick bio of you for the guests, but in your own words, maybe give us a quick overview of who is Jay and what are you all about?
What am I all about? I think that changes throughout people's lives, but currently I am a 46-year-old Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitor and just hit 8 years as a vegan. I try to focus on whole food, plant-based, and not the junk stuff. I was attracted to the lifestyle initially for the health purposes, but obviously over time I became an ethical vegan as well. But I did it for my health. So I've been a big proponent of a plant-based diet now on social media for about, I think, 7 years now, and I'm kind of getting away from that. I sold a business last November, a year plus ago, and I'm just, kind of stepping away a bit from social media. I've kind of repeated the same message now for, like I said, 6-7 years, and don't have too much more to say on that, but I do love to come on people's podcasts and kind of free talk and kind of talk more in depth about my story. Grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and I'm currently living in Miami now, and I've kind of lived all over. I spent 12 plus years in Hawaii, where I had a career out there before I left that to start my business in spring of 2015 with my ex-partner. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And in terms of your martial arts, what got you on that journey? When did you start martial arts, and how did you get into it?
I started so late relative to most people, even though I wanted to start much earlier. Back in 2003, 2004, whatever, one of the first, 1993, 1994 range, when I was only just still in college, I came across first UFCs, and there was a guy on there, back then it was martial art versus martial art, where now the UFC guys know all forms of martial art. They do boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. Well, back then it was more geared towards just one martial art versus the other. And there was this, skinny 175-pound guy that was destroying everybody and choking everybody out. And back then there was no weight classes either, which made it even more impressive. And I was like, I want to be a black belt in that someday. And then life happened, and there was no jiu-jitsu was very small back then. Like, that was the stepping ground for Brazilian jiu-jitsu in the U.S., the early UFCs. So I tried to find it. I was on Cape Cod at the time, and there was no jiu-jitsu, but I found a guy that taught judo. And judo, when they go to judo is a stand-up martial art, but when they go to the ground, often they do similar stuff to jiu-jitsu. Nowhere near on the same technical level, but so I would go to him, and I bought the old Gracie Jiu-Jitsu VHS tapes, and I would watch those, and then I would take privates from the judo guy and ask him to do groundwork, and I would try all my moves on him. And then I eventually moved to New York City, forgot about it, got a job in finance, and it wasn't until I moved to Hawaii. I moved to Hawaii in January 2003. And I still didn't, I could have started right away out there. There was a coworker that had a gym, but I still waited a while. I waited till March 1st, 2009 to actually start. And it was 2 months shy of my 36th birthday. So a very late start. And I just kind of fell in love with it right away. Like I knew I would. I told my coworker friend, he kept asking me to come down. I'm like, I will when I'm ready, because I kind of have a OCD personality, and I know that I'll kind of go 100%. And he was like, yeah, sure. But anyway, I started going twice a day and fell in love with it. And it's been a passion of mine now for March 1st will be 11 years.
Wow. Yeah, that is kind of a rare journey to start so late with martial arts. Typically people are like, I've done it as a child. Or it's funny too that you started on Cape Cod, because I started my martial arts saga on Cape Cod as well. A little tiny
What do you do? What's your martial art?
Yeah, it's Tang Sudo, which is Korean, and it's very similar to Taekwondo, but there are some differences. Okay. And the studio isn't around anymore, but it was this tiny little shoebox in Hyannis, and I would go a couple times a week, and it was just started in second grade, and just kind of it took off, and it stuck with me.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the Cape isn't really known for its like martial arts, right? So it's kind of cool to hear from another martial artist that grew up in this area. And I love your story. I like that you kind of came back to it. It called you back.
It's interesting. Life does that. It'll call you back to things all the time. Like, I got my job in finance in New York City as a stockbroker because I became super passionate in my mid-20s about researching and buying stocks and stuff. And then I got a job in New York City, and that was more sales than anything. I thought I was going to do what I loved, but it was more of like a high pressure sales job. And I was there during 9/11 and all that, so I left. But I've been drawn back after I sold my business to that. That was a passion of mine 20 years ago, and now I'm back, reading the books and trading stocks, and it's crazy how things will come in and out of your life that you're drawn to.
Yeah, or that you need at that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did you become kind of more on this champion level? Because I know it looks like from your information that you've competed and gone on to win championships. How is that process for you? How did you get along that path?
Yeah. Well, I've always been a competitive person and an athlete. I played 3 sports all the way up through senior high school, like lettered in 3 sports in high school. And then in college, I didn't really want the commitment because I knew what that took in college sports. I wanted to have a little fun for once. But fortunately, in my first week on campus, I saw a sign for rugby. So I did rugby for 8 semesters of college. That was where I could still compete, but not on the same, I still have fun, And so I've always had that competitive nature. So when I started jiu-jitsu, Hawaii has a lot of jiu-jitsu schools, but there aren't a lot of competitions. But I entered everything I could right away as a white belt. I got my blue belt really fast, like in less than 6 months, and then I started competing at blue belt, all the local tournaments, and then at blue belt I traveled to California and I did worlds, and I was 30, I think 37 or 38, and I competed at adult, and then I went on and I did Nogi Pan Ams at 38 as a blue belt, and I came in second um, as an adult. And I remember I lost in the finals to this young 19-year-old kid who's now like one of the best lightweight guys in the world. So it was kind of cool. But
Wow.
you know, age does catch up to you. And then I moved to Miami in late July 2015, and now I could finally compete more. And I went to an amazing school, a very competitive school. I train at Fight Sports. My professor is Robert Cyborg Abreu. He's 6-time world champion. He's a ADCC Nogi absolute champion. That's like one of the most prestigious tournaments without the kimono. And so there's a very good culture for competing there. So I started to compete right away. When I moved to Miami, I was a brown belt, and I competed in my division. I was in Masters 3. And yeah, my first year being able to compete on a regular basis, I had an amazing year at brown belt. I won every tournament I entered. I didn't have a point scored on me all year. I won Pan Ams, and then I won Worlds in August of 2016. And after winning Worlds, my professor gave me my black belt. And then I started competing right away. In January, I went to Europe to compete in the Europeans at black belt. And I've been a black belt now for, I just hit 3 years this few months ago. So yeah, I just started really competing mostly when I became a brown belt, and now as a black belt. So I'm looking forward to getting back into competing. I'm going to be doing Pan Ams again in March. I was up on Cape Cod all summer, so I kind of slacked off a little bit for the first time in 10 years, but getting back to competing again. Yeah, I just, I don't know what it is. I do it for myself. I have nothing against beating anyone individually. It's more of just a process to see where you're at. And you can learn a lot about life when you compete in sports, I think. And anytime I was always competing growing up, I was always in a good place. So when I'm training a lot, when I'm competing, life's good.
Yeah, are there any points throughout your career? I know you mentioned, hey, getting older, like you can see differences, but are there any points, besides that in your career where you faced adversity trying to, hit a milestone?
In jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I guess specific to jujitsu, like any points where, you hit a wall and couldn't get through or didn't want to get through or had any sort of adversity that you hit during your journey, and how did you overcome that?
To be honest, in jiu-jitsu, I was so passionate about it that I don't train for tournaments. I don't compete. I don't do jiu-jitsu to compete. I do jiu-jitsu because it's basically like why people do yoga. It's like my time of day where I don't think about anything else, and I'm just on the mats and I'm completely focused. So it's always been a very important to me in that sense. It's my, it's my meditation basically. So when I'm competing for a tournament, I'm even more in that zone. So um, I don't know. I haven't had any, knock on wood, any major issues, any major adversity yet. Yes, I lose matches. Everyone does. That's normal. But I've been very fortunate enough in 10 plus years to not have a major injury. And I know that would be really debilitating for me because I just love to be on the mats every day and train. So I've been pretty fortunate. I've had issues in life, of course, like everyone else, but my jiu-jitsu journey has gone fairly smoothly because I never took it like I mean, let's be honest, I'm 46 years old. I'm not a 20-year-old trying to become the best in the world and make a career out of it. I do it because I love it, And I
Yeah.
think if I was a lot younger, it would be a different story and I might put more pressure on myself. But any day I can get out and compete or any day I can train, I consider it very fortunate at my age to be in this health and feel as good as I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you mentioned you were whole foods plant-based and you have been for a number of years. What in your life pushed you towards that health choice? Like, how did you choose to create that path, especially as an athlete?
Well, I'm very, I can look at something, and if it's logical and it makes sense, I can change my mind immediately. I'm not like stuck in my ways on a lot of stuff. And I wasn't close to my dad or anything, but in, I think it was 2010, October 2010, he died of a heart attack, kind of just dropped dead of a heart attack at 66. And that's kind of been a common theme in my family. All my grandparents never made it to 80. I think all my grandparents had passed away before I even got into high school, except my one grandmother. She passed away when I was in college. So they've always been fairly unhealthy. They smoked, they drank too much, I ate too much meat, too much probably processed food as that evolved over time. And so I'd go through phases in my life where I was really health conscious and I wasn't. And, I was doing what I thought was healthy, at the time. But then I saw summer of 2011, I was kind of on a documentary kick on Netflix. And I watched Forks Over Knives. And, that was less than a year after my dad passed. And they talked about, reversing heart disease and how, it's, as Dr. Caldwell says, it's a toothless paper tiger that need never exist. And I was intrigued by that. And because when you hit, my a high school friend had a stroke that year too at 38. So it was kind of scary seeing people your age start to get cancer, have heart attacks, elderly people that, you grew up with dying of heart disease and cancer and stuff. So I started taking it more seriously. I think when you're in your 20s, you feel like you're invincible. And I wanted to make a change, not so much for athletics, but more for my long-term health. And coincidentally, after I watched Forks Over Knives, I read a book called The China Study. I started doing more and more research. And by that January, I went 100% plant-based. And without even thinking this would happen, my recovery just went through the roof. My cardio improved. I was suffering with a lot of tendonitis in my shoulders. That went away. Within 2 weeks of going plant-based, I just felt so much better getting out of bed every morning. I was training a lot. I was like in my late 30s, training twice a day. That can take a toll on the body, and I'm a smaller guy, so I'm always training with heavier people. Having that weight on you is very tiring and can make you very sore. And when I noticed that difference right away, I was like, wow, there's really something to this. So, I took a course. I got a certificate in plant-based nutrition through eCornell, through Dr. T. Colin Campbell. And I just wanted to spread the message because there's always been this perception of, vegan being weak and not athletic. And I wanted to prove that wrong. And it's so crazy. I think one of the reasons I've kind of stepped away from social media is now look what's gone on in the last few years. The Game Changers came out talking about everything I felt, 8 years ago when I went plant-based. So I feel like, there's more qualified people to talk about it now. It's not so much as a passion of mine as it used to be. But I felt at the time I just wanted to spread the message. And that's how I went plant-based and kind of went down this whole rabbit hole and ended up having my own business through it and everything. It was pretty wild, but it all started with a documentary.
Wow. Some people say that, it just takes one thing and one moment, one feeling in your life to make a decision that can impact your entire destiny, your entire future.
Yeah.
And
There's that old saying, when the teacher is ready, the student will appear, and I've talked about this lifestyle now for 7+ years, and I've had hundreds of people through jiu-jitsu message me or talk to on the mats, and a lot of them weren't ready at the time. And then sometimes some of the least likely people, I think, they'll reach out to me and say, hey bro, I just want you to know I've been plant-based now for 2 months. I feel awesome. I've lost weight. It's just like those people I could never have pictured them in a million years, like eating that way, or living that way. So yeah, I think I just saw the information at the right time in my life where I really was open-minded to it, because probably of, like I said, my dad and people around me getting sick and dying of disease that now I know doesn't need to exist most of the time.
Yeah. Did you face any, backlash for choosing that lifestyle?
I'm 100% sure a bunch of people probably talk behind my back, but what happened was I started talking about it on Facebook a lot. And then after, about 6 months of talking about it on Facebook, I said, I'm going to start my own page. And this is what I'm doing. I'm getting a certificate in plant-based nutrition. If you guys want to hear more, follow me over there. And so I kind of separated it from my friends in that sense on social media. So the ones that wanted to follow could. But I don't walk around and talk about it to anybody. Like, nobody would even know if it wasn't for my social media presence. I talk about what I want to say on social media, and I don't force it on anyone else or discuss it. I mean, my friends bring it up more than me outside of social media, and but I never really had an issue. I think maybe it's my age. I think maybe, like, my friends know that, like, I'm pretty logical and I research stuff. Like, I wasn't like, you ever have that friend that, like, every week it's something new and
Right.
they're all over the place? Yeah, I wasn't really like that. Like, if I start something, I'm pretty committed to it. So I think they knew I was serious about it. It wasn't like, oh God, here's Jay again doing this other thing, this fad diet again, because I never really talked about my diet my whole life on social media. It's the first time I'd done that, so no, surprisingly no. And I know a lot of people, and if you're listening to this and you're younger, you get a lot of slack from friends and family, but you got to live your life. Nobody's taking care of your health but you. So I was lucky in that sense, but I know a lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
But you know what I will say? I got the information. I think a lot of people hear a lot of information and they just start, I'll say, verbally puking on their friends and family about stuff. Whereas I took a course before I did it. I made sure everything I said was backed up by science. So that's another reason I think I wasn't so shit on by my friends and family.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's knowledge out there. Some of it's great, some of it's not so great, right? So not all of it's there's almost TMI out there right now, but I think,
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Right.
It's another reason I'm getting away from social media, I wanted to just do a podcast like you guys do, but I didn't have the energy for it. So I just like going on other people's podcasts, but just the day to day on social media lately, it's just like, ugh.
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
It's and the social media cleansing is a great thing, and something that if that's if that's something that you need to do for yourself, then absolutely 100%, like, take that break. And I just love that you did your research. You took the Colin Campbell course. You can't argue with Colin Campbell. He's the best. So it's kind of like you did what you needed to do for yourself, and you felt better, and so you kept doing it. And I think that that's the biggest thing. Like, if people don't feel good doing it, then don't do it. I'm the same way. I eat whole foods, plant-based and vegan, but I'm not going around and preaching it to people. And if somebody wants to try it and maybe they don't feel good doing it, then hey, maybe it's not for them. So
when I preach, it's more of a reaction, a frustrated reaction to misinformation I see other people posting, like, I'll give you an example. I've been on YouTube now since fall of 2012. So, fall of 2012. So coming up on, like, over 7 years here. And I've seen so many people that, posted videos about plant-based diet and veganism. And I see what they eat and I see the way they live, and then they go back to eating animal products and they blame the diet. That's really frustrating to me when you see them make video after video of, doing a 2-week juice cleanse or just eating raw food, and they don't eat all of the whole plant foods. They don't eat legumes, they're afraid of potato. Like, it's just frustrating. So a lot of my recent stuff on social media has been that. I've been preaching the same message now for 6 years, like I said, but it's very, very simple. And I think our world, like anything in our world, people overcomplicate things, To succeed on a plant-based diet, if you're listening to this and you want to give it a try, you really just need to focus on fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and some whole food fats. Not tons of oils, but whole food fats. Avocado, things of that nature, in moderation on the fat side. And take a B12, and that's about it. And we've complicated this so much, and I think a lot of that is people trying to build a career on social media, and get people to follow let's do my 1 month, raw diet, or my 2-week juice cleanse, And I think that leads people down a rabbit hole of disordered eating and lacking nutrients and not eating enough calories. Because if you eat enough calories and you focus on eating all the whole plant foods, you're not going to have any issues for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. I think it has been overcomplicated, and that makes people fearful of it, and then they avoid it completely or go the opposite way.
Yeah. Right? People in my own life that have gone plant-based, not one of them have had an issue once, My brother's been plant-based now for, how long have I been? 8. He's been for almost 7 now. All his kids are. I have friends that are now, and none of these people have issues because they eat the way I told them to eat, the way the information I gave them, the videos I had them watch. They eat like that, and I have no issues. It's when you try to eat this completely purity mindset of food and living is when you run down issues and disordered eating, and I think that's where people fall into trouble. Just from my experience, from seeing it over and over again on social media.
Kind of staying on this topic, but more personal of a question. What is, your daily routine, even your morning routine, if you want to get that specific, but what are some like daily routines and habits that set you up for success, especially being whole foods plant-based?
When I go grocery shopping, I don't buy junk. I only buy whole foods. I don't buy oil. I don't have oil in the house. I don't have junk food in the house. And that's, people say, well, I couldn't do that. Well, it's easily accessible, but if I want to eat junk food, I got to get on my scooter and go up the road or something, whereas versus you go in your freezer and grab that ice cream, but I make things very simple. I don't like to cook. I don't like to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. It's not a passion of mine. So I basically do everything with a rice cooker or a Vitamix, and that's about it. Almost everything. I literally, like, a simple day of eating might be something like overnight oats. It takes me 3 minutes at night. I'll throw some frozen blueberries, a cup of dry oats, some ground flaxseed, some cinnamon, and a sealed container, and fill it with almond oat milk or something, and I seal it. In the morning, it's ready to go. I open it up. I slice a banana on there. I throw a tablespoon of walnuts, and there's my breakfast. 0 time. I train every day at 11 for Jiu-Jitsu at the competition class. So in my rice cooker, before I leave the house, I'll put on a cup of brown rice and, dry cup. So it's a large portion. I'll throw that in. I'll go train. I'll come home and take a shower, and my rice is ready. I'll grab a can of beans or lentils, throw it on the stove, reheat it, throw some greens in a bowl, throw my rice and beans on top, throw some guacamole on there, some pico de gallo, and there's my lunch. So I make things very simple. I don't overcomplicate it. I don't spend a ton of money. I think a lot of people think you need to spend a ton of money to eat a vegan diet because, they go out. Most kids today, they eat most of their meals out, and it's very expensive, So I try to eat at home, and I try to keep it really simple. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've had such no problem with this. It's been very easy for me. Your palate craves what you eat daily. If you eat something consistently for 90 days, after 90 days, you're going to crave that food. So I try to make sure my focus is on eating the right foods and making it simple for me to eat it. Where because if I come home and I got to prepare an hour and a half lunch, guess what? I'm going to grab the junk food out of the fridge or something, or I'm going to go to the store and eat out. Or I'm going to go down the street and grab a sandwich, you know? But if you prepare and you make things simple, it's very easy.
I think that that's going to be pretty encouraging for somebody that's listening that might want to try it and can see, hey, if I get this routine in place and I have these habits that I can form every day, and it's simple and it's focused and it's really, it's just that easy, then I think more people will be willing to give it a shot. So I appreciate you sharing that and just some of your little like tips and habits. Are there any, I know you mentioned, B12, are there any supplements that you take or any products that you kind of can't live without?
Nope. That's another thing. Everyone on social media thinks you need to sell something. I've been pretty adamant about this. I don't believe in supplements outside of, taking a B12, because if you're whole foods plant-based and you're washing your food and you're not drinking from streams and you're not eating animal products, which get the B12 through eating grass and dirt and so forth, you're not going to get enough. Outside of that, I've taken a DHA omega-3 algae-based supplement a few times over the last few years, but I'm not consistent with that. Right now, it's just B12. Make sure I drink plenty of water and just eat a variety of whole foods and get plenty of sleep. I get to bed early. Yeah, that's about it. Like I said, it's not as difficult as people think. It's amazing that humans have been on this planet for 1 million years without supplements and protein powder. I mean, I don't know how we did it.
How did we ever do it? I love it. And I love that you mentioned sleep as well, because I think some people overlook that as being an important factor, and it really truly is something where you need to get your sleep in order to feel
Yeah. I mean, back to the supplement thing and everything. One of the things when I was researching a plant-based diet, I also wanted to see anecdotal evidence, and I saw, if any of the viewers heard of the blue zones, they're regions around the world where they have a very higher level of longevity than other cultures, and all the blue zones had a few things in common. And none of these people took supplements. None of these people took protein powder. What they did was they ate fresh, whole foods. They got 95+% of their calories from plants. Legumes were a staple in the diet. They had active social life, and they got exercise daily. And a lot of that exercise doesn't need to be strenuous. They walked a lot. They did physical labor. And that was it. There's no fancy. They eat simple, non-processed food, and they got to bed early, and they got brisk exercise daily, and that's it. Like, why are we trying to invent the wheel here? Because people need to sell a product, right? But the reality is, if this culture in Okinawa back in the 60s was living longer than any other culture in the world, and the majority of their calories came from sweet potatoes and beans and rice, why do we have to complicate it?
100% agree. It's funny. I want to bring it back to maybe even your career, but also, you could bring it to your diet, whichever one comes to mind. But are there any, any like bad recommendations that you've heard, like truly bad recommendations that you've heard in your areas of expertise, whether that be with your diet or with martial arts, whatever comes to mind first?
Diet, I've heard a zillion,
Right.
Like this whole new trend, carnivore diet. Are you kidding me? Every study in history shows that fiber is incredibly important to us. And there's people completely avoiding fiber, I mean, you could just open up social media and scroll every day, and I want to vomit by the poor guidance you see on social media. But as far as it comes from the plant-based end, drinking too many of your meals, I just don't think that's normal and natural. And I think so many people do that now. They start their day with a green juice, which is fine. I have a green juice sometimes too. And then they have a fruit juice, and then they have a smoothie for lunch. And, they're hardly chewing any of their food. And our digestion starts in our mouth. We're meant to chew our food. So I recommend chewing most of your calories and getting it from whole food sources, eating a whole potato, you know, eating the beans, eating the fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, I was gonna actually say that digestion starts in the mouth. That it
Yeah.
what you chew begins in your mouth.
Yeah, and so many people now are I mean, even from a non-vegan side, the the gym guys, they're going to the gym, and what do they
Yeah.
do? They're drinking a protein shake. You know, you should be chewing your food. You know,
Well, I
I
was
think that's a
actually
big thing
curious.
across the board.
I wanted to ask you about the blue zones that you just mentioned. The research that you read on that. I'm just genuinely curious about this. How long ago was like how far back did they go when
There's
they
still a lot of these cultures, but you know, they started doing a lot of this research in the mid 1950s and stuff, I believe. You can follow the blue zones on Instagram, and it'll kind of lead you down a rabbit hole on that. But yeah, I've even read a book. I can't remember the name of the book a while ago. It wasn't specifically about the blue zones, but the author talked about all these longest living cultures. Yeah, and they were like all from all over the world. It wasn't a specific region, like the Hunzinga tribe and the Okinawans and parts of Japan where they focused on, you know, rice and vegetables was the majority of their calories and things like that. So yeah, they did autopsies on these people and they don't have heart disease. You know,
Yeah,
cancer's rare.
I'm curious about it because of all the pesticides and toxins in our food nowadays. Because so for me, like I take supplements, and mainly because I'm like, well, there's so much pesticides and toxins, even in organic whole foods now. It's like you really don't even know how organic it really is, and what they're spraying it with, and how much of the nutrients are still actually in them.
True, but I also think that the main issue in our country with all the disease is people eat so much processed food now.
Yeah,
It's not real food. So
that's true.
I don't know. I've come across that in my thoughts in the last 5 years as well. But I've heard Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn and Dr. T. Colin Campbell say it's not as big as a deal as you think. You don't always have to do organic. You just have to focus on the whole food itself, you know, because the whole food itself has so many phytonutrients and antioxidants in it that alone. I mean, I've seen studies where, you know, someone can eat a very poor diet, but when they're combining it with, you know, vegetables, it negates a lot of the negativity of the other food they're eating. So I just think we have a real issue, especially in the U.S. with processed food.
Yeah, I
I mean,
completely agree.
if you turn over, you shouldn't be eating stuff in packages unless it's like, you know, a whole grain that's in a package, you know,
Well,
or, you know,
that was gonna lead me to my next question, even like with all the vegan restaurants now, what are your feelings about that? Because, you know, it's basically processed.
yeah, I agree. It's,
Not
like,
legumes and plants the way that, you know,
yeah,
you can make it simply, cook it in a rice cooker. There's so much
yeah,
processed crap in it too.
it's definitely more processed, but there are places you can get, you know, a bowl, like a rice bowl and stuff, but they will put oil in that and stuff. That's still significantly better than a lot of the fake meats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I have to understand, I eat whole foods, plant-based for my health, but I am also an ethical vegan.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to look, it's absolutely laughable to me that I'm seeing all these posts on social media about the Impossible Burger at Burger King, and everyone's saying how unhealthy it is. Nobody's posting about the other shit at Burger King, right?
Yeah.
You tell me the fries are good for you, and that crappy burger, and all the processed bread they use, and how many preservatives they put in it so it won't go bad. Like, give me a break. I mean, it's absolutely absurd that we're even having a conversation about some of the processed vegan foods. If you want to have a talk about processed foods as a society, I'm all for it, but don't like put it on just on the plant-based stuff, you know. I did a post on my Instagram like 2 posts ago, and it said, you know, when there was a chef shared this. It says, when did we ever consider burgers, ice cream, sausage, pizza, or cheese healthy? Simply add the
Yeah.
word vegan. Simply add the word vegan, and everyone question if it's healthy. The difference, one is cruelty-free and the other isn't. We aren't claiming vegan ice cream is kale. look, I eat junk food sometimes, and I go out to eat at restaurants and I enjoy my food. And I love the fact that now there's a million options for me, especially down here in Miami, to eat vegan food. It's a social thing when you go out with your friends to eat, it's nice. And I love that I can have options now. Restaurant food has never been a healthy thing. It's sugar, fat, and salt. And I mean, that's what makes food taste good. They're loading butter on everything. They're loading oil on everything. They're loading salt on everything. They're loading sugar on everything. So it tastes good. Their job is to have you enjoy the meal so you come back, right? So anything at a restaurant isn't, for the most part, unless it's designed specifically to be a health food store, most restaurants' food is not healthy. So if I'm gonna go out and eat at a restaurant, I'm fully aware that I'm not gonna be eating the healthiest thing for me, but I'm also an animal doesn't have to die in the process for me to eat that food. That's the way I look at it. I love that there's more options because not everyone is gonna eat like you and I, and not everyone's gonna eat healthy. People don't care. They're gonna eat processed food, especially when they're younger. They think they're invincible. So I love the fact that now they can choose a less cruel option on their plate.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not even like, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I completely know that there's so much processed crap, and I definitely don't eat Burger King or McDonald's, and I'm definitely not for any of those companies and
Yeah.
the cruelty that they promote. And I definitely know that I like my Impossible Burger at times, and there's a lot of options in San Francisco. So I'm just putting it out there that with vegan, even with the some of the stuff that the ingredients that I've read in the vegan foods that I bought that were packaged, because obviously, like, I want to eat plant-based majority of the time, and when I look at some of the ingredients, I'm like, what is in this? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, and I
But
have
it's
to
the same
research.
shit. It's the same shit that's on the back of Doritos.
Yeah,
It's just
I mean,
it's junk food. This isn't new stuff. It's just now it doesn't have animal products in it. So
yeah, exactly.
it's
So
the only difference. So I don't know why everyone's making a big deal about it. But I've always preached try to get 90% of your calories from whole plant foods. So let's say you eat 2,000 calories. This is an ideal world. Let's say you eat 2,000 calories a day. That's 14,000 calories a week. 10% of those calories, if you want to enjoy some junk food, that would be 1,400 calories. Great. You can go out twice a week with friends and have a 700 calorie lunch, or you can go out once a week for dinner and have a 1,400 calorie dinner of junk food. That's the way I feel like you're going to be able to eliminate a lot of the risk of heart disease and stuff like that, and diabetes and all that stuff. If you get the majority of your calories from whole foods, I think you're going to be all right. It's a slippery slope because these foods taste so good that I've definitely gone on bad months of eating where I'll eat out too much and eat poorly.
yeah, I had a streak where I was mostly I was like vegan for a year. I wasn't but I wasn't a real vegan the way that you are, mostly plant-based. I was eating like mostly processed bad food, not even.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah. It's easy to go down that road. I see it happen a lot. Like I see people, like I said, on social media, I've seen it all in the last 6-7 years. And I see a lot of people that they ate wonderfully for a few years. And then you can see them over a 2-3 period eating just processed junk all the time. And then they're like, God, and then they come out with a video a month later. Hey guys, I'm not vegan anymore. I didn't feel, no shit. I've seen what, you didn't have this problem 3 years ago when you were eating like whole grains and beans every meal, so.
There's actually this diet that I used to follow, and I forget the book. It's this doctor that says is basically I'm not gonna say that it's a vegan diet, but it's basically eating all like legumes. He was all like eat sweet potatoes, eat grains, like whole grains, no meats. He was not even like I know this is like one of those fads of like, oh, this new diet, like follow this, like paleo, starch. What I think it was like called the starch diet or something. Like he was literally.
Oh,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I read the book. It's a great book. That's the Starch Solution by Dr. John
Yes,
McDougall.
yes. So I did that. But I think when I was doing it at the time, I think I overdid it. I was working out at the gym like a lot. I was at the gym like every day for several hours a day, like at different points. And I ended up getting and like feeling inflamed. Like I had too much inflammation in my body, and I think that's a combination of things of just not resting. Like you said, you have to rest, get your sleep.
I mean, I basically eat a starch-based diet. I mean, like that. I mean, that's pretty much what I eat. But you got to get your greens in. You got to get your fruits in too. And
wasn't he not really like greens?
No. He said, his basically thing was half your plate should be starch, and the other half should be non-starchy vegetables, greens, and fruit. Like if you break down your meal. I don't know what you're eating daily, so I can't really like critique, but I don't know. I've been eating that way for a long time. I definitely do go through periods where I eat a ton of fruit though, in the summers and stuff like that.
Well, okay, I'm curious outside of your habits, with what it is that you eat in terms of like what you are what you consume. What about segueing this a little bit towards a different area of like in terms of consumption, like what are your spiritual practices?
Jiu-Jitsu.
If you have any. Well, if you have any, like, and that's a big one too, obviously, because it takes a lot of focus and attention. But is there anything that you do? Like, do you meditate? Do you, what are your other like habits that you preach?
Like I'm being dead serious, like jujitsu is my meditation. But no, I live, I'm a minimalist, like a big time minimalist now. I'd say I've gotten to that the last few years, and I live a very, very simple life. And I think if I look back at times in my life where I was unhappiest, the most stressed, I always like, it was too much. I was working too much, or I was into consumerism too much. I thought this would make me happy. I thought that car would make me happy, So I think I've really narrowed down my life in the last few years, and I'm at a very peaceful place now. I'm a pretty introverted person, so I have a girlfriend, I have good friends, but I spend a good amount of my time alone. And I really think having a passion in life and having things that you really look forward to and trying to spend as much time doing that really helps on your mental health. But I wake up, I have my morning coffee, and I go train at 11 every day, and that kind of sets the tone for the day where for 1 hour a day, I'm not thinking about any issues in my life. And I really mean that. Like jiu-jitsu has been a big part of my life in the sense of spirituality and meditation. I'm not a religious person whatsoever. I don't follow any religion or anything like that.
Yeah, that's
I don't
beautiful.
I don't have a ton to say on the spirituality side, to be honest.
Well, I mean, jiu-jitsu, and it's like what you said. I feel like any sport in its own, it's spiritual, it's meditative.
Yeah,
because you're focused on your own.
I love hanging out with dogs. that definitely helps. But I really try to focus on. I think when you're in a good place, you're a lot better person to other people. I look back at times in my life or people I know when I was like really not a good person at times in my life. It was because I wasn't in a good place. So I really try to selfishly, in a way, focus on myself first always and making sure I'm in a good place. And I think that's made me a much better person to others around my life.
Is there a moment in your life where you felt vulnerable, or is there a moment you can share where you felt the most vulnerable, where maybe it impacted you enough to make some sort of a decision?
Yeah, when probably one of the first big major shifts in my life was 9/11. I think we're taught to go to school, go to college, get out of school and get a good career and all this. And I was a stockbroker in New York City, and I'm sure everyone who knew me thought I was doing great, but I was really in a dark place. I was unhealthy. I was unhappy. I was stressed. I didn't like what I was doing. And then 9/11 happened, and I just, after not to sound too cliche, I realized like life's very short, and I stuck around at that job maybe another 6 months or so, 6 to 9 months. I went to another firm with my partner thinking maybe that would make me happier, and it didn't. And then I just said, I had no plan, no direction whatsoever. And I just quit my job at, 29 years old, and went back to Cape Cod with nothing. I bartended for the summer and didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And that's kind of what led me into Hawaii. And I really think that move to Hawaii was a big change in my life and set the tone for who I am today. And the Hawaii journey was interesting in a lot of ways. If you don't mind, I'll get into that for a second.
Yeah. No, I would love to hear more about it.
Okay, so when you grow up Jessica, you grew up in the Northeast. You know how the mentality is. And then I worked in New York City, and the mentality is very cutthroat. It's about keeping up with the Joneses and stuff. And I went to Hawaii, and I had no plan of action. And I was in a little beach town, and I started bartending out there before I got into my career back in sales out there, which I can get into. But I fell in love with Hawaii like right away. Like, I grew up in a beach town. Hawaii was just like the most gorgeous place in the world, and it still feels like home to me whenever I go back. But the people there, I was very judgmental. I didn't say this out loud, but I'll say it here. I was very judgmental of a lot of the people out there. They were, in my mind, like, I would be like, in my head, it'd be like, these people are losers. They're living at home, freaking with their family. They're not, they don't do shit. They just surf every day, whatever. And I was so judgmental of them. And then after a few years, like, I was like, you know what? What's my fucking problem? These people are the happiest people I've ever met in my life. They focus on being happy every day. And I think the culture out there and the people out there had a really, I don't know if I've ever talked about this, they had a really big shift in my mindset of trying to just focus on being happy every day and doing what I love. And what's crazy is once I did that, I had more success in my life than I've ever had. So it is wild.
Wow.
Yeah, so I would say that was a big turning point in my life was 9/11. In a matter of a year, a matter of 6 months, actually, I quit my job in New York. I moved to Hawaii with a bag of clothes, and then that was a big change in my life. Hawaii is where I started jujitsu. I got my dog. She's no longer with me, but my dog played a big part in my life at the time. And then I started jujitsu. Then I went plant-based, and then I started a business through plant-based. And yeah, that move, that idea to say I don't care what anyone else thinks in my 20s, and I don't care. I'm not happy doing this career, and just walking away just hoping that life would figure it out. And now that's kind of set a precedence. Like when I started my business, I had a pretty good job in Hawaii. I mean, I was putting a lot away in my 401k plan. I could train jujitsu at lunch. I had a lot of flexibility, but I was just like, you know what, things work out. They worked out for me when I moved to Hawaii. I'm gonna give this a shot and try the business. So that would be the turning point in my life where I felt the most vulnerable. I remember one time in New York, this was like a few months, this was like in the early winter, the weather was miserable. This was like about 5-6 months after 9/11. And I was in the shower in the morning, and I was literally dry heaving. I was like almost throwing up just the thought of going to work. And I was like, this isn't life, And I made a decision to just quit a few months later.
Wow. Well, I was going to bring up what you mentioned about the mentality and the difference in mentality, not just between like East Coast, West Coast, or, East Coast Hawaiian mentality, but it's kind of a mentality that that we have in the world, right? So there's this, whether you call it East Coast or the stereotypical German mentality of like, get shit done now, think about the future, think about planning. And then there's that Jamaican mentality or Hawaiian mentality, however you want to call it, which is like, no, be present, be happy in this moment. This is your moment.
Yeah.
And then there's like,
exactly.
Then there's the middle ground where it's like, well, maybe you can have a little bit of each and you can take something from each of those pieces of your life and really create something special with it. So I feel like you were enjoying Hawaii, you went plant-based and you were doing this thing that made you happy, but in that same moment you were like, no, I'm going to start a business too. And I really love that like marrying of two cultural mentalities and worlds to say, hey, I can be happy and I can also take what I've learned in this other hardcore environment and apply it to happiness and really do something that I'm passionate about.
I never really thought about that. Made a very good point. Because I will say I'm more in the middle ground now than I've ever probably been. And I'm very mindful of my finances. I'm not an idiot with money. And I think when you're in the consumerism lifestyle, you think you're striving towards something, but at the end of the year, you don't have any money because you bought a new car or you got a nice apartment. So now I'm in a phase where I'm enjoying the Hawaii lifestyle, where I do what I want every day and I live, living my passion and doing things in life that I love. But because of my minimalism, I don't care about spending money on consumer things. So I'm able to invest a lot of my money and be able to set my future up. So I'm kind of living the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned minimalism as well, because, that's the ultimate thing that can lead to happiness, is just like purging these materialistic things that don't have meaning that we assign meaning to. So I guess with that,
man, stuff doesn't make you happy. It really
No,
doesn't.
it's so true.
It does not. Is there anything? So I know you're minimalistic, but is there any like gadget or anything like under $100, or it doesn't matter? Like, is there any gadget?
Well, that's the thing. People think because you're a minimalist, like you're cheap. No, it's not about that. I always buy the nicest shit if I want something. I just bought a brand new. It's a Christmas gift, but I got a brand new espresso machine. But in the end, that's going to save me, $150 a month. It's going to save me a bunch of money. So, but no, I honestly will buy whatever it is I want. I'm not cheap, but I know at my age and through my life and my experience that I know that these things aren't going to make me happy, So I only focus on spending money on things that I know they're going to make me happy. A lot of the stuff
will make you happy.
Yeah, it will. But most of the money I've spent now in the last 3 years has been on traveling. So that's what I spend my money on now. So like, I never was like these young kids today. I see them, after college, they're backpacking Europe and stuff. And I was so envious of that because, I grew up I didn't have money growing up. It was just my mom raising me and my brother. So I had to like work to pay my college loans right after college. And I always had a job. So when I started the business and I was able to work mobily, I did a ton of traveling in the last 3 years. So I would say that's my thing now. It's not so much stuff. It's like seeing the world. And that's another thing that's really opened my eyes to realizing you don't need stuff, is seeing these other cultures and how happy some of these people are. Like being down in Mexico and seeing these kids smiling and having a blast with literally nothing. They would be like destitute if they were in the US, So I'm not opposed to spending money. I like the freedom. Minimalism to me is the idea that if I want to move right now, I could be packed up in 20 minutes. Like, I think a lot of the stress and anxiety people have in the world is because of all the stuff they have. Like the thought of me having, like, let's say I wanted to take a job across the country and I had a house full of stuff, that would just give me so much stress. Now it's like, oh, I can just pack my bag and be ready in 15 minutes. And if it doesn't work out, I can always come back to here, versus this overwhelming stress and anxiety of all the stuff we have as humans now. So I'd rather spend my money on experiences now than stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I came to that realization myself a few years ago, after spending money on designer stuff that I don't even wear anymore. And I'm currently selling, and I just sold a pair of Louboutins that I don't wear and haven't worn in years. And I'm just like, why do I even have this? Why did I spend $2,000 on this? I could have taken a trip. But you don't know what you don't know, and you learn.
Yeah.
But
yeah, sometimes you need to do stuff like that to learn, though.
That's how I had to learn, because now my value, what I value more is educational workshops, events, and experiences and travel. I love to see the world and cultures. Going backpacking, I went to Argentina and Chile with my dad last year, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. And there's no piece of artifact that could ever buy that experience for me. There's no pair of shoes or clothing that can buy that. And I do value clothing as well. I value, but I'm more quality over quantity. Like, I'll buy something that is expensive to some people, but will last me a long time.
Yeah, I'll do the same. And look, if someone's passion in life is fashion, do it. I just think a lot of people are trying to fill voids with stuff. But if some of the stuff, if some of the stuff that you buy is your passion, then go for it. But like, a lot of the stuff is like, I'll give you an example. I bought a brand new convertible BMW in Hawaii. Life was good. Sales were good. I thought it would make me, I just moved in with a girlfriend. I realized it was a bad thing. It wasn't. And I thought getting a nice car would make me happy. That car caused me so much headache, and I went into so much debt because of that car, because a year later, the real estate crisis hit, 07, 08, and tourism in Hawaii dropped, and my income dropped 50%, and now I was struggling to make a car payment. I went into credit card debt, and I'd gone into debt in my mid-20s too, earlier, and I thought I was through with that. And then I think that was like the realization. I'm like, what am I doing? So once I got rid of that car and got rid of that debt, like ever since then, I realized, how many times have I tried to make something make me happy? It's an internal thing. So now I don't even own a car down here in Miami. I have a scooter, and I could buy that BMW for cash today if I wanted, but I just know that it's not going to make me happy,
Yeah. What was it like starting your business, and what compelled you to do that? And what was that process like for you?
It was basically because it was just a thought one night. I was dating my girlfriend who I had the business with, and she was in LA. I was in Hawaii. She was moved. Her and her ex made a decision that moved to Miami because they both wanted to be around the kids. And we were at that stage in our relationship where it was like, we, at the time, we thought we were in love, and we didn't, it wasn't going to work. You can make Hawaii to California work. We can't make Hawaii to Miami work, And it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to move there, And then I just came up with the idea. I was heavy on social media at the time. I had a decent following. And then when we started dating, I introduced her on my social media, and then she started a YouTube channel, and her social media started growing. We were making videos together. And we were very passionate about sharing the lifestyle. And I never thought about making a career out of it, but it just made sense at the time. She was a yoga teacher, and I saw the model of, subscription-based websites. Really, I just felt like it was really going to take off. And I took a chance, and I started a website through my friend's friend for $250. I didn't overthink it. I didn't, I think that's a problem people have. If you're listening to this and you're thinking about starting a business, just do it, because it's never going to be perfect. I just said, what do I got to lose? I'm leaving this career. I'm moving to Miami. I don't want to get a job. I took a shot, we didn't put up a lot of money at all at first. It was no effort financially. So I took a chance, and it just worked itself out. I don't know if I was lucky or smart, but sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, right?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting story that you were moving while you were starting your business too. So props to you for going to a new area, and it seems like you're not averse to risk taking by any means.
Yeah, and you know what? And I hate to get on my my dad shtick with the viewers, because you probably have some young followers, in the sense like, save your money, protect, don't overspend. I couldn't have done any of this stuff if I had a lot of overhead, because I cut out all my monthly bills. I knew, hey, if this doesn't, I don't need much to survive here. So I was able to take a chance. It's a lot more overwhelming to take a risk if you have a $2,500 mortgage and a $400 car payment and college loans, and you know what I mean? If you have all this, if you have a $4,000 nut at the beginning of the month before you even buy food, versus having, a $1,000 nut at the beginning of the month, it's a lot easier to take chances and pursue things in your life that you want to do.
It seems like more of like a calculated risk.
Yeah, like I've always repeated this for years on my social media, and I think I've said it on every podcast, is because we kind of get to this point in the podcast where someone will talk about how did you do this? How did you do that? What made you move to Hawaii? What made you start? And the whole thing is, I heard someone say this in my 20s, and it always stuck with me. It was an old salesman guy, and he said, what's the worst case scenario and what's the best case scenario? So anytime I come across something in my life and it involves a decision like that, I say to myself, what's the worst case scenario and what's the best case scenario? The worst case scenario was I could just go back and get a job in Hawaii doing what I was doing. I knew I could get hired anywhere. I knew I had a good life in Hawaii, and it was always going to be there for me. And it's still always there. I can move to Hawaii tomorrow and probably get a job with my old company, So my thought process was, what's the worst case scenario? I do what I'm doing now. What's the best case scenario? I'm living it. I'm semi-retired at 46. I summer on Cape Cod. I live in Miami. I travel the world when I want, So yeah, don't be afraid to take risks. Worst case scenario is usually what you're doing anyway,
I love that thought process. Whenever I feel any sort of worry or stress cross my mind, I'm always like, well, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I've run myself through that visual. And I think Tim Ferriss actually talked about this in Stoicism. Right, Jess? He talks about this. I'm pretty sure it's in one of his books or a podcast, right? Stoic, being stoic. Yeah. So just like, what's the worst that can happen? And then when I run that through my mind, I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not like I'm going to die.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I've come back from worse shit than like, oh, I got to get a job now. Like, you know what I mean? I ran through this. I was selling my business a year plus ago, and I was like, oh man. And then, you know what? Then I just stopped. I got half a second worried, and I was like, you know what? Things are going to work out fine. And they have. They worked out better than I thought they would, So yeah, don't be afraid to take chances, especially if you're young. What do you got to lose? Like, you can go back to doing what you're doing now. So take that chance, listeners.
Are there any, I know we talked about a few kind of health related books, but are there any books that you've either most gifted or that you would recommend to folks out there that you're passionate about?
Probably wouldn't apply to most people, but I think I just got delivered today. I'm back into my whole stock market thing, so I read books on that. I really read stuff that I'm passionate about, So I'm not a huge book person, but when I do read books, it's usually always on something I'm focused on and I'm completely enthralled with. That's going to help me either, spiritually, financially, health-wise, whatever. So as far as the plant-based stuff, I really loved. I did like the Starch Solution because it was a very simple approach, but I liked Proteinaholic by Dr. Garth Davis. The China Study was a big book. Those were some of them. And then outside of that, it's more geared towards stuff I'm into, which really doesn't apply to a lot of your followers.
We talk a little bit about finances and saving. One of my favorite books is the Tony Robbins books, Money Master the Game, Unshakable. But there's a book I read recently on negotiation and basically how, I think it's Trade Your Way to Financial Freedom is the name of the other book I read. But, I think in terms of finances, and you mentioned it earlier, like if you have a lot of debts and you've got a lot of things going on in your life that you have to pay for, sometimes you can't take these risks that other people who are set up financially could take. And it's one of those things where like even our younger listeners, like I'm sitting here at 32 years old. I wish I had started investing way sooner than I have, and so I like to encourage people to go get that knowledge, go read those books, go get into that stuff. And it looks like you're kind of coming back to it. You were in that field early on in your career, and you're kind of coming back to like, hey, how can I do something different here or whatever. But yeah, if you have any recommendations there.
Well, I'd say this. I think a lot of young people, they think everything has to happen now. And I know I felt that way in my 20s, and I'm 46 now, and I feel like I have so much more life ahead of me. So I feel like it's okay to get a job for 10 years and get life experience through that job and find mentors through that job, those jobs and careers, and bounce around. But I think it's very important when you start, if you're listening to this and you want to set yourself up for the future, the best thing I ever did, I was really bad with money in my 20s, but when and I'd done the stock market thing, but that was just for a few years trading. And then, I moved to New York and I just kind of blew that money on stupid shit or whatever. But the best thing I ever did when I got my job, and I wish I had done this in my 20s, when I got my job at the sales job in Hawaii, I contributed 25% of my pay into my 401k. And I did that for, over 11 years. I worked at the job for over 12, but you couldn't contribute the first year. So I did that for 11 straight years. I put money away, and I found a way to live off the money after. That's the thing. I think a lot of people have goals and aspirations, and the finances often hold you back. So I would recommend putting the money away at the beginning versus after your bills. Does that make sense? Because you'll find a way to live off $2,500, $2,000 a month if you have to. But if you're getting $3,000 a month and you're like, oh, I'll just spend, and then the end of the month I'll put that away, you're gonna spend all your money, So start invest in your company's 401k plan when you get a job, and max that out if you can. And that way, when you leave, and let's say you want to take a chance and start a business, you know that you have a nice nest egg that's growing. You can roll over your 401k into an IRA, and you can let that grow. So my thing was, hey, I put away money for 10 years. If this business fails, at least I know I have a retirement that's going to be there in 20 years, So I think it's important to take care of your finances at an early age, like you just said, because whether you use that money now or not, it's going to give you a lot of peace of mind about taking risks when you're older, in your 30s, or maybe even 40s, and ready to use your life experience to start your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for dropping your wisdom there. And where can people find you? I know you said you were kind of going to be taking a social media cleanse here, but
yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. So that's at 801010 athlete. It's plant-based athlete, but I remember when I started Instagram years ago, they wouldn't even let you use that long. So I used 801010 athlete. So it's 801010 athlete on Instagram. My YouTube is plant-based athlete. At one time I had over 600 videos on there. I think now I have 8 because I really just wanted to make things simple it's not my career anymore. I just wanted to make things simple for someone looking to go plant-based. You can just watch those 8 videos instead of being overwhelmed by 600. I just left the ones that I thought were best for how to go plant-based. And I have a Facebook plant-based athlete as well. And that's about it right now. But yeah, I'm very, I answer most people's DMs on Instagram. If you have any questions how to go plant-based or any jiu-jitsu questions, feel free to hit me up. I'm more than happy to give back and help anyone that has any questions.
Amazing. Well, we will link all of that in the show notes. And thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on and being one of our first episodes of 2020. And yeah, we just had a great time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
We appreciate your perspective and your time and all the wisdom that you shared with us today.
I know I can be a little long-winded on some topics, but I feel like sometimes it's important to get into the details of how.
No, we appreciate it. That's why we bring people on with different perspectives.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. For more information on today's speaker, please visit us at boldandvulnerablepodcast.com.
And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading the love by being bold and vulnerable. Thank you. We love you.
Thank you guys so much for listening to our episode with Jay, and here is some bonus footage for you of Jay helping Svetlana through some dietary questions on a plant-based diet.
Yeah, if you ever have any questions, just hit me up on Instagram or whatever. I'll give you my number if you ever want. Like, if you want to give it another shot and you're struggling, I'd be glad to help.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I will probably like probe you with some questions when I do in the future. I've done so much research on it myself with like being vegan, being vegetarian. I don't eat a lot of meat.
I know most people, if they're at your stage, they don't. You know what I mean? It's just like, you probably eat like fish and eggs and shit like that.
But even with fish, I'm like, God, this has so much mercury in it. And right now with like, you know, when I was pregnant breastfeeding, I'm staying away from fish because I don't know what's in it either, you know, so it's very limited.
Yeah, no, it's scary out there now. Like to mass produce food the way they do, it's not going to be even remotely as healthy as it probably was in the past, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're eating if you're eating something that's extremely sick, I mean, how's that going to be health beneficial for you? You know, these animals.
Yeah, you're eating that.
Yeah, they're sick their whole life. They're scared. They have trauma.
Yeah.
They're on antibiotics their whole life, so they grow faster. And I mean, it's crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But I'm big on probiotics. I don't know if you're big on probiotics. I'm huge on probiotics for the gut, especially after like giving birth, and they gave me so much. I ended up my labor was like really intense and long, and I ended up getting an infection while I was in labor. So they gave me an IV of antibiotics for 2 days, which obviously I'm sure you know just like messes with your gut and digestion.
Yeah, fortunately I haven't been sick very often. I've only had to take antibiotics once in like the last 15 years, and that was when I got staph on my knee because of Jiu-Jitsu. But I haven't had to deal with that, and I think there's been studies about beans and how good that is for your gut once your body adjusts to it, you know. But fruit is like the ultimate prebiotic too. You know, you want to eat a lot of like raw food and stuff. That's really good for your. It is a good prebiotic as well. So try to get your fruit in. I'm sure you do, but
yeah, berries, just stuff that has less sugar. I think like I'm concerned about candida. I'm like with my gut right now. I'm like, I'm rebuilding my gut right now. But no, you're right. I mean, sugar in fruit is not the same thing as processed sugar in the processed foods.
Yeah, it's packed with fiber and antioxidants and phytonutrients and all the good stuff. So nature usually doesn't fuck up.
Thank you guys so much for listening to our bonus footage. This is Jessica. Please contact me if you are interested in going plant-based, or send Jay a DM. I know that he is keen to answer anyone that's reaching out to him, but he's been plant-based for quite some time, and I went plant-based in 2016, so we're there for you if you are making the switch and transition, and we know how hard it can be for some people, especially with dietary restrictions, chronic disease, things that some people can't help, allergies, things like that. So please DM me, and I'm happy to help you guys. And enjoy the rest of your week. Stay tuned for our next episode. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, and we can't wait to see you guys soon. Thanks.